YouTube, what is going on? Is your boy APFC. We finally won a game. Happy days. It is 5:50 in the morning here. The game finished half an hour ago, and I just wanted to do a raw reaction for you guys. Um, Generally speaking, a step in the right direction. I'm not going to be one of those Arsenal fans getting carried away saying, "Oh, but we're back." We're not back. There's still a lot of room for improvement, particularly in the first half, which I thought we were the same as we have been for a very long time in respects to backwards, sideways football. But to the credit of the lads, Arteta must have bollocked them in the halftime, and we came out a stronger team in the second half. So we'll go through the lineup first. I'll compare it to the lineup that I did. So the back line and the goalkeeper was pretty much what we all expected. We expected Leno to start, Bellerin and Saka. Saka was a slight question mark because of Kolasinac being back, but based on the form of him, I think he deserved to start the game. As well as Mustafi, who kept his place, even though there was talk of Pablo Mari coming in, and obviously David Luiz playing at the centre back as well. Granit Xhaka started the game again. The unexpected one, I think, was Ceballos starting as that centre midfield role. He played a bit more of a box-to-box role today. A lot of people expected Xhaka and Torreira to start. Wasn't the case. And I think ultimately, I'll get to analysis in a second, but I think ultimately that was the right decision because Ceballos was pretty much one of the main factors who changed the game and were allowing us to get forward a lot more and create more goal-scoring opportunities. Out wide, we had Aubameyang out left, which I will get to that, but I still don't think he's as effective out left as he is through the middle. A lot of Arsenal fans will agree with me on that one. Pepe played on the right-hand side. The surprise one being Eddie Nketiah starting, I think it was his first Premier League game. So it was a standard start for us. Defensively we were looking pretty solid, although Newcastle did have a couple of chances in the first half an hour or so. Saint Maximin was causing a lot of problems, particularly on Bellerin. I thought Bellerin didn't handle him overly well today. In the first half an hour, it was mainly sideways, backwards football, what we sort of expected under the end of the Wenger era and the Emery era. And something that I really saw against Burnley, which is the reason why I don't think we got the result that game, was the ability not to play the ball forward. But this all changed just after the half an hour mark, and I think this is for two sort of key factors, is that number one, Ceballos was getting into the game more. Ceballos, what I like about him, and I will discuss him in detail in a moment, is that he will always look for the forward pass. He has this urgency that none of our other midfielders have in respects of being able to spray the ball forward and always looking to link up with the attackers. Occasionally, you'll also see from Ceballos, he likes to make those forward runs after playing the ball, looking for the return pass, and he was looking to create. But the main factor for me, and I can't believe I'm saying this because I am one of his biggest critics, is that as soon as Mesut Ozil got into the game more, pretty much I noticed it was around after the half an hour mark, the whole game changed. Ozil put in one of those vintage performances that we were used to seeing in the past, and ultimately, he was a bit of a ghost in the first half an hour. He wasn't finding those pockets of space. He wasn't dropping back deep enough to get the ball. But at some point in that first half, Ozil took it upon himself to take responsibility, and ultimately he was finding a lot more space in the middle of the park. Whether that's because Newcastle was tired because we were holding a lot of the ball in the first half, I'm not sure, but I do notice that we had a lot of space there, and Ozil was starting to play a lot more of those sort of through balls that we've been accustomed to, from him. And ultimately, we ended the first half pretty positively, even though the first half was a pretty average performance. What I didn't like about the first half is that I thought Aubameyang is absolutely useless out left. Despite the fact that we still won the game 4-0, I do think that this needs to be rectified. I just think that without having a proper winger in that position and without having Aubameyang in his preferred position, we are missing the trick up front. And I think if we had someone like Aubameyang today up front, we could have won the game 5 or 6-0. And I just think we weren't really finding those spaces before the half an hour mark. We were having too many shots outside the box. And we weren't really getting the wingers in the game. We were relying a lot on Saka to sort of get involved, and he was doing so. Bellerin, again, I thought was not great, particularly going forward. I think defensively he was okay, even though he was really struggling with St. Maximin at times. But yeah, I just think that the first half was the sort of the same Arsenal of old, but what I do like is the way that we bounce back in the second half. And I assume that is probably because Arteta rallied the lads at half time because we came out a completely different team. I can't give us all the credit though. I do think that it wasn't just us breaking Newcastle down. I think what sort of started the downfall of Newcastle was how poorly they defended for the first goal. Not taking anything away from the Pepe cross. Pepe whipped a lovely one in with his left foot, but it was hanging in the air for the while. And I think Newcastle were expecting were hoping, based on their game plan, to push us out wide and to sort of put in some of those hopeful passes into the middle. Ironically, that was the way that we scored. I was surprised that Aubameyang was able to get his head onto that, but that was an excellent finish, a world-class finish, in fact, went into the bottom corner, and that was 1-0. From then on in, we were really actively starting to try and break between the lines. Obviously, we were doing that just before the first goal. Eddie Nketiah had a really good chance where we came down the right-hand side, and he got a little bit unlucky and just hit the bar there. I think on another day, that definitely would have gone in. Ozil was getting more involved in the game. Ceballos was bossing the midfield. Xhaka, who I thought was a bit quiet in the first half, was winning more tackles. And this is what I sort of liked about Arsenal, is that under Emery, we would have played quite a defensive pairing, probably Xhaka or Guendouzi Torreira. But in those games that we should be taking the front foot and taking initiative, Arteta recognised that and was able to play a more attacking player in that centre midfield role. And that ultimately probably is what won us the game today. It allowed Ceballos to find more pockets of space, which in turn allowed Ceballos or Xhaka to find Mesut Ozil in more spaces, and Mesut Ozil, particularly in the second half, was running the game as such. So we were actively looking to break between the lines, and we were really starting to take players on down the wings, and this is how the second goal came about, with Saka absolutely rinsing. I'm not sure who that was, but he put the ball between the legs, cut it back. I think that was meant for Mustafi, but Pepe made a very intelligent run and finished at bottom corner. Pepe is a player that Arsenal fans have been desperate to get better performances out of, and I think particularly in the second half today, Pepe stepped up, and I think he ended the game with 1 goal and 2 assists, one off that free kick, and I think he may have set up I think it was the third goal that he set up. But it was for no, the fourth goal was the fourth goal that he set up for Lacazette. Ozil was the one that set up. No, Lacazette was the one that set up the Ozil goal for the third. So once we got those 2 goals, we started to really take control of the game. We saw, as I said, Ceballos, I'll get to in a moment, but he changed the game completely and added a whole new dynamic for us. Obviously, Arteta, just before the winter break, had recognised that we weren't creating enough goal-scoring opportunities, and I think a lot of that came from the midfield. Our midfield has been a lot more supportive defensively, but it's been taking something out of our attack. But obviously, he's rectified this. I don't think he's going to play Ceballos in every game at centre mid. I think there will still be games where he'll play Xhaka and Torreira, but these are the type of games at home that we really need to be on the front foot, and Ceballos was able to offer that for us. He looks very comfortable on the ball even when getting pressed. As soon as he gets the ball, he always was looking out wide, and he just plays the ball that marginally little bit quicker than other midfielders we have, particularly out wide. And over time, although it may not work in the first half where you're trying to play the ball a bit quicker, it eventually tires the opposition out, and I think ultimately that's what was tiring the wing backs out for Newcastle, because we were moving the ball out quite quick. They had to come up quickly and press each winger that we had. And Ozil was really dictating the game at this point. He was putting in through balls to Aubameyang. He was linking up very nicely, and he was putting in a good shift defensively as well. And it's not something that we've often seen from Ozil, particularly this season. But I will say he was one of the main reasons why we won the game. I will get to player ratings in a moment. I think towards the end of the game, Newcastle had either given up or completely tired. Lacazette, no, sorry, not Lacazette, he did score, but it was Ozil that got the third goal, which I think it was Lacazette that played across, and Ozil sort of got a little touch. You could probably argue that Dubravka could have done a little bit better, but that was 3-0. And one of the key parts of the game, and that could ultimately be the key part of our season, is that Lacazette has broken his goal-scoring drought. He has not scored since early December, and he found himself at the right position. If you actually watch the replay, he completely scuffed it. He sort of hit it from his right foot onto his left, and it ended up going top corner. Doesn't matter how you get him in at the end of the day. The way that we built up the play was very good. I think that started from Willock, who came off the bench. But it doesn't matter for him because he needs that confidence. And I do think even with the 6 to 8 minutes that Lacazette got on the field, I do think that he actually did make a difference, and he does add that little bit more than Nketiah. I thought Nketiah was okay today, but it's a process for him. He's a very young player, and that was ultimately only his first Premier League start. So, couple of points I got here to discuss. So, Ceballos, as I said, moves the ball quicker than any of our midfielders and defenders. He's always looking for pockets of space. When Xhaka has the ball, he's always in between the lines and he's always looking to find open space so then he can move the ball forward either out wide or to Mesut Ozil. I think Ceballos offered that support that Ozil has not had for this season at all. Not saying that Ozil, it's not his fault why he isn't performing, because a lot of it is self-inflicted. But with Ceballos breaking between the lines, it gives him the opportunity to link with our wingers better and ultimately link with Ozil. It takes another defender or midfielder out of the play, which in turn gives Ozil more space. So as I said before, Ceballos was always receiving the ball and trying to spray it out wide quickly, particularly through to the left-hand side. And defensively, he doesn't have the most physical frame, but he does put in a very good shift there. In some certain games, I don't think it's going to suit him to play the centre midfield role, rather playing him at cam in certain games. But I think today he offered something that we have not had for a long time in the midfield, which is attacking threat. As I've said in previous videos, we've only got one goal from the midfield. Not that any of our midfielders really scored today, unless you want to count Ozil as a midfielder. But at the same time, he's creating those chances for us, and we were looking to break through. Aubameyang probably could have had another goal. There was one where he came down the left-hand side. That came from Ozil and ultimately came from Ceballos as well. And we were just creating a lot more chances, and I think towards the second half, because we held so much of the ball and we were spraying the ball that marginally bit quicker, Newcastle were worn out. Centre mids looked sturdier in the second half as well. We were looking to play the ball forward a bit more. I think Xhaka was one of his more quiet games, but doesn't take away from the performance that he had. He was still really solid in that sort of area. He wasn't losing the ball often. I thought in the first half at times he was the Xhaka of old, but he quickly switched on again in the second half and showed real leadership qualities to be able just to be a calming influence. And he's getting pressed a lot more, but he didn't really seem phased. The old Xhaka would have definitely seemed phased if he was getting pressed. But the new Xhaka, the Xhaka that is reformed under Arteta, is really showing some leadership qualities and ultimately is really putting himself in the position to be a regular starter for Arsenal, and he's been very consistent since Arteta has come in. Our wingers had some better performances today. Pepe, who I thought was quiet in the first 30 minutes, slowly got into the game. I think that assist gave him that little bit more confidence to bomb forward. I still think he could be in better positions to take players on, but ultimately you can't really argue because he ended the game with 1 goal and 2 assists. His delivery in the box was pretty solid today. And what I like is that when the Arteta system is working, attacking-wise, our wingers are always in the box when the ball comes in from either the right or the left back, but mainly the left back, which was Saka today. And it gives them the opportunity to get into more goal-scoring positions, and that is how Pepe got the second goal for us, which, in my opinion, pretty much killed the game off. Mustafi, a player that has been so widely criticised, has continued to his excellent form. I thought today that there were a couple of chances that Newcastle could have scored. St. Maximin hit the post, and I think there was one moment where Newcastle came down the left-hand side in the second half. I think it was the first half, actually. Was it the first half? It was the second half, where they came down the left-hand side, and they played the ball in, and I think it may have been something, maybe it was Kieran Clark or something that was in the middle, and ultimately pulled it wide, but I think David Luiz got a touch. Centre-back switched off there, but Mustafi was reading the play very well. He made quite a lot of interceptions. He was winning a lot of balls in the air and generally looked like a composed figure. Luiz and Mustafi have really struck up quite a partnership, and it's sort of justified in respects that they are very experienced defenders. Mustafi, a lot of people forget, has won a World Cup. David Luiz has played at the highest level for many, many years, and together they look more composed, most importantly, a player like Mustafi, who's not always known for being composed, David Luiz has, I think, really instilled a confidence and a confident aura amongst the defence, and most importantly, a calm aura amongst the defence. So all up today, I think we were solid. I think the scoreline probably flattered us a little bit. I think Newcastle completely switched off at the end, but it is a step in the right direction. And what was the real positive signs for me today was Ceballos playing at that centre mid role, because he added another dimension to our attack. The improved performance of Mesut Ozil. I will get to player ratings in a second, and the fact that Lacazette broke his duck off the bench, and we looked a lot better. There's still a lot more room for improvement. I still believe Aubameyang should be playing through the middle. I still think that concentration-wise, we are lacking at times. We do switch off. We were giving the ball away a lot in the first half, and we weren't really creative in the first half. We were playing a little bit too safe in respects of just playing backwards, sideways, but definitely a step in the right direction. I'm going to get to player ratings today. So Bernd Leno, I'm going to give a 6. He didn't really put a foot wrong. He made a decent save off a deflected free kick. I think Ceballos tried to head out and he pushed it to the left-hand side. His distribution in the first half was a little bit questionable, but he didn't really have much to do, so I'm just going to give him the standard. Probably just give him a 5 today. Not that he did anything wrong, but he just didn't really have much to do. Hector Bellerin, I thought, was one of our weaker players in the field today. I think he struggled with St. Maximin often. St. Maximin was rinsing him in the first half down that left-hand side, and it was Bellerin who tried to body check him in the second half, and Maximin went through and then hit it against the post. He does really struggle against those quicker players than him. He doesn't have that tactical nous and positional quality to be able to adapt to those situations. Something that comes to mind was that game years ago that we played against Bayern, where Douglas Costa was absolutely sending into the cleaners. And again today, at times, St. Maximin was doing that. Bellerin is very one-footed, so he was giving the ball away quite a lot. Defensively, he was okay, but again, we still have that little bit of an imbalance down that right-hand side. Bellerin does not push forward at all. And at the same time, I think the only reason that Saka pushes forward down the left-hand side is that Xhaka does probably fill into that left-back role and just sits there. Maybe Arteta doesn't like his wing-backs pushing forward too much, because Bellerin never seems to get forward, and Xhaka ultimately replaces Saka down that left-hand side. And I think why he does that is so Aubameyang can get central. So I'm not sure whether it's because Bellerin's not fit enough or he doesn't have that confidence yet to take it on, but you barely see those runs that Bellerin used to make going forward anymore. Didn't really see that much today. Lost the ball a few times. I'm going to give it Bellerin a 5. Just don't think it was one of his better games. David Luiz won a lot of balls in the air. I think his passing was a little bit off today. Don't think the centre-backs were majorly tested, apart from a couple of chances, but he did all the right things, won all the right headers, and was a real calming influence, as I mentioned before. Again, probably not a game that you could really rate him highly, because he didn't have the greatest deal to do. But I'm going to give David Luiz what am I going to give him? I'm going to give him a 6. Mustafi, I thought, was the best out of the centre-backs today. Not that David Luiz put a foot wrong. I just thought Mustafi was getting more and more involved. He wasn't giving the ball away as much. He wasn't as reckless. His positional ability has improved a lot. You could always see at times that Mustafi had the ability to be a much better centre-back. Maybe finally we're starting to see a lot more improved qualities about him. There was times where he was reading the play very nicely, and when he was making those interceptions and committing his body, it was paying off. And that's why I think Mustafi gets a slightly higher rating than David Luiz today. I'm going to give Mustafi a 7. Saka, Bukayo Saka. Very, very good again today, and I'm going to do a video on him soon, because we really need to tie him down to a long-term contract ASAP. He was making so many runs. He was blitzing it down that left-hand side with his pace. As soon as he got that assist, he got some more confidence about him. He was taking players on. His crossing is very good, although probably not his best performance in terms of crossing today, but just making a nuisance of himself, taking players on, getting involved with the attack. He was linking up very nicely with Aubameyang at times down the left-hand side, and ultimately it was his moment of brilliance that led to the second goal. Saka is an 18-year-old Englishman that has not been talked about a lot, There's a lot of other young English players that people have been discussing this season. Nobody has mentioned Bukayo Saka at that left-back role. Could you potentially see Saka holding that position ahead of Kolasinac and Tierney? Right now, I wouldn't be dropping him. So I guess the answer to that question is yes. And we're just seeing Saka come into himself more and more and showing more confidence. And to have that level of maturity for an 18-year-old really sort of highlights the type of player and the quality player that we have in our squad at the moment. Saka, for me, is going to get he's going to get a 7.5. I think Saka was one of our better players today. Granit Xhaka, I genuinely believe, was one of his more quiet games. Doesn't mean he put a foot wrong. He just didn't have as much to do. I think the first half we were seeing the Xhaka of old, but the second half he sort of pulled it together and played a much more composed performance. He was moving the ball a little bit quicker, showed a bit more urgency, was winning more tackles and covering ground that little bit quicker, which ultimately sort of allowed us to win that midfield battle, giving Ceballos, with Xhaka holding back, it was giving Ceballos more space to push forward. Xhaka, for me, gets a 6.5. Ceballos, Ceballos, whatever it is. He was excellent today, particularly in the second half. I did like his positivity in the first half, but it wasn't necessarily paying off for him at times. The way that he was able to push forward and how quickly he was moving the ball out wide, finding those pockets of space which allowed him to turn. What I like about Ceballos is that when he gets his ball with the back to the defence, he's always looking to turn straight away because he understands the threat when you turn very quickly as a centre mid and play the ball, because ultimately you're breaking the lines quicker, which in turn sort of confuses the midfield and probably pressures their defenders just that little bit more into making a decision. He was playing a lot of nice through balls out wide. He was winning quite a few tackles as well. And as I said before, I still think Ceballos would be best at that cam position. Ozil had a great game today, but I'm not going to get carried away because at times things just weren't working out for him as such. But ultimately, he really was improved a lot today. And I am going to give Ceballos an 8. And it's really nice to see him into the starting lineup, because when you have that attacking ability such as him, you need to get him and fit him into the lineup there. And I'm very happy that he's getting some more game time under Mikel Arteta. Who am I going to rate next? I am going to rate Nicola Pepe. Nicola Pepe in the first half was a little bit uninspiring, but that's assist, which I will give him credit for, but I will admit there was a little bit of luck there as well with some very poor defending down that right-hand side. He does whip him some very good crosses down the left, but he sort of came into the game more when there was more spaces being open, because when there was more spaces open in the midfield, it allowed us to move the ball down the wing a little bit quicker, which is what really is Nicola Pepe's strengths. And Arteta mentioned this in a press conference recently, that we need to play more to his strengths. I think at times today we didn't, but the majority of the game we did. And ultimately it allowed him to get into more attacking positions, and he ended the game with 1 goal and 2 assists. And his final product was good. I like how he was able to get into the box more, to get in some more goal-scoring opportunities, and it was a very good finish for his goal. He took that very nicely. Nicola Pepe was right. Aubameyang, I still think is very ineffective out left, and that's not his fault. This is what Arteta is doing, and I think this is something that we need to maybe go in and look for a left winger. Maybe we've got Saka that can play there in the future, but I think right now we need to look for a left winger, because we are missing something out there. There's only so much we can do out that left-hand side, and then all it takes is for one team to overrun that left-hand side, and a lot of our threat is diminished. It allows too much pressure on Saka when Aubameyang's in the box. I can see why Arteta does that, play Saka further up, and then Aubameyang can come in so Aubameyang can get into more goal-scoring opportunities. But when you have the best attacker, one of the best attackers in the Premier League, playing out left, you're not ever going to get the most out of him. Saying that, he took his chance very nicely today. I think it was only his second chance that he got that goal. He's very, very clinical with his conversion rate. Don't think he was excellent today. He did give the ball away a few times and his crossing was a bit weak. But I'm going to give Aubameyang, maybe it's a little bit harsh, but I'm going to give him a 6.5 today. I think he finished that very nicely, but I think the rest of his game leaves a little bit to be desired. Mesut Ozil, my man of the match. Cannot believe I'm saying this. I've criticised him a lot lately, but we saw the Mesut Ozil of old today in terms of how quickly he was able to move the ball out wide, how nicely he was getting into those pockets of space. He was pulling in a few dummies, and he was feeding our wingers like he has not done this season. I criticised him after the Chelsea game, saying we are missing that Ozil of. We all know that defensively he's never put in a shift, and he's never been that sort of player to really stand out defensively. But what he was able to do today with I guess finding himself in those pockets of space, which I think Newcastle allowed us to open up a bit more in the second half because maybe they were a little bit gassed, a little bit tired. But he was finding those pockets of space. He put in these really lovely through balls, particularly one outright in the second half to, I think it may have been a Aubameyang or maybe have been Pepe. I can't remember exactly who it was, but that was the first half, sorry. But he was putting in these lovely through balls through, and something that we haven't seen from him a lot this season. And I think Ozil, for me, gets an 8.5. I think he is the man of the match. Potentially he gets an 8, but I'm going to give him an 8.5 because I genuinely believe he was our man of the match today. Eddie Nketiah, his first Premier League performance, and I don't really think he put the foot wrong. I think in the first half, it was a struggle for him because he was getting absolutely little to no service. And I don't think he has that experience yet to sort of take the game by the scruff of the neck when he isn't getting as much service. I think Lacazette is probably better in those situations when the strikers aren't getting a lot of service from the midfield and creating their own. Nketiah had a very, very good chance in the second half. He also had one where he held the ball too long in the second half and ultimately lost in the box. But this will come with experience. This will come with time. I do like his tenacity, particularly at times in the second half. He was trying to drive the ball forward, but it just wasn't working for him today. But you can't really criticise the lad. But for me, he gets a basic 6. Going on to the subs, I don't think Lacazette was long enough on the field to rate him, but the most important thing about today was that Lacazette broke his ducks, and hopefully that is a sign for better things to come, and that allows him to get a lot more confidence. He did miss-hit that, as you may have noticed, but good on him. He was able to get himself in that good position, and you could see the joy not just amongst him, but the players and how they celebrated with him. It is a very unified unit that you can see at the moment. Torreira came on at the end. I'm not going to rate him. Didn't really seem too much of him. And obviously Willick came on in the last few minutes. But all up, moved the ball much quicker in the midfield. We were creating a lot more chances. Ceballos changed the game. Ozil put in a man of the match performance. 4-0 to the Arsenal. Very happy with that, but still a little bit of room for improvement. And that's pretty much all I have time for today, guys. This has been a raw reaction of Arsenal versus Newcastle. Thanks for watching my videos. Please check my other videos out throughout the week. I will be doing one on Bukayo Saka very shortly, and I will be doing more with our Olympiacos game coming up on Thursday night British time, but Friday morning Australian time. Thank you for watching, guys. This has been APFC.